The flash of silver caught Rachel Collier's eye. As the invitation slipped from the envelope, an elegant cursive, announcing Morgan's bridal shower, against shimmering cardstock. It wasn't the invitation itself that surprised her, but the name of the bride-to-be. Morgan Stevens, her college roommate whom she hadn't spoken to in nearly 3 years. "Well, this is unexpected," Rachel murmured, scanning the details. The shower was being hosted by the maid of honor Kimberly Adams in just 3 weeks, and the location was listed as TBD. Rachel frowned at the hasty note scrawled at the bottom. "Rachel, I know this is last minute, but I'm drowning. Morgan mentioned you're an event planner now. Please call me, Kim." Rachel sighed, setting the invitation on her kitchen counter. Event planning had become her salvation after being laid off from her marketing job 18 months ago. What had begun as organizing a few friends' birthday parties had evolved into RC events. Her now thriving business specializing in intimate, personalized celebrations. She glanced at her already packed calendar on the refrigerator. 3 corporate events, a baby shower, and 2 birthday parties filled the next month. But Morgan had been more than just a roommate. She'd been Rachel's closest friend throughout college, before careers and distance created a gap neither had successfully bridged. Before she could reconsider, Rachel picked up her phone and dialed the number on the invitation. "Hello," a frazzled voice answered on the 3rd ring. "Kim, this is Rachel Collier. I got your invitation about Morgan's bridal shower." "Oh, thank God." The relief in Kimberly's voice was palpable. "Rachel, I'm desperate. I promised Morgan I'd handle everything, but my job just transferred me to Chicago for the next 2 weeks, and I'm completely overwhelmed." Rachel found herself smiling despite her reservations. Morgan always did have impeccable timing. "What exactly do you need?" "Everything," Kim admitted. "I have a budget and a guest list, but no venue, no theme, nothing. The shower's in 3 weeks, and I feel terrible asking, but I'll help," Rachel interrupted, surprising herself. "Send me what you have, and we can talk details tomorrow." After hanging up, Rachel stared at her calendar again. She was taking on too much, as usual, but the thought of reconnecting with Morgan through planning her special day felt right somehow. Besides, it would be good for business. The Stevens family had always been well connected. 2 days later, Rachel found herself pulling up to an imposing glass and steel office building in downtown Portland. Kim had transferred the budget for the shower, a surprisingly generous sum, and mentioned that Morgan's brother was handling the financial arrangements since he was loaded and wanted to make his sister's wedding season special. Rachel checked her appearance in the rearview mirror. Her auburn hair was neatly pulled back, and her emerald blouse complemented her eyes. She'd opted for professional attire, black slacks, and a blazer, wanting to make a good impression on Morgan's brother, whom she was meeting to discuss venue options and confirm the budget. The reception desk directed her to the 32nd floor executive offices. As the elevator ascended, Rachel reviewed her notes. According to Kim, Morgan's brother had recently taken over their father's shipping company and was willing to spare no expense. Rachel had prepared 3 different venue proposals based on the theme Kim and Morgan had selected: Parisian romance. The elevator doors opened directly into a sleek reception area where a professionally dressed woman greeted her. "Miss Collier, Mr. Stevens is expecting you. Right this way." Rachel followed her down a corridor lined with abstract art and nautical photographs, mentally calculating how much each piece might have cost. The shipping business must be doing well, she thought. "Miss Collier to see you, sir," the receptionist announced, opening a heavy door to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city and harbor beyond. Rachel stepped inside, her practiced introduction freezing on her lips as the man behind the desk stood up. He was tall, at least 6'2", with broad shoulders emphasized by his perfectly tailored navy suit. But it was his face that caught her off guard. Strong jawline, penetrating blue eyes, and dark brown hair with just a touch of silver at the temples despite appearing to be only in his mid-30s. Rachel Collier. His voice was deep, with a warmth that seemed at odds with the formality of the office. "I'm Sebastian Stevens. It's a pleasure to meet you." Rachel recovered quickly, extending her hand. "Likewise, Mr. Stevens. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me." His handshake was firm, his hand engulfing hers. "Please call me Sebastian. Morgan's spoken highly of you over the years." Rachel blinked in surprise. "She has." A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Of course. You were her roommate for 3 years. She credits you with getting her through organic chemistry." "That was a rough semester for everyone," Rachel laughed, relaxing slightly as she took the seat he offered across from his desk. "Coffee? Water?" he asked, returning to his chair. "Coffee would be wonderful, thank you." Sebastian pressed a button on his desk. "Caroline, could you bring in coffee for Miss Collier and myself? Thank you." He turned his attention back to Rachel. "So, Kim tells me you're the event planning wizard who's going to save my sister's bridal shower." Rachel felt a blush threatening to rise. "I don't know about wizard, but I'm happy to help. Morgan was a good friend." "Was?" Sebastian raised an eyebrow. Rachel shifted in her chair. "We've lost touch over the last few years. Life gets busy, indeed it does." His blue eyes studied her with an intensity that made Rachel wonder if he was assessing more than just her professional capabilities. "I understand you have some venue proposals." Grateful for the redirection, Rachel opened her portfolio and began explaining the 3 options she'd selected. Sebastian listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions about each location. His focus was impressive. Most clients glanced at their phones or seemed distracted during presentations, but Sebastian remained fully engaged. "The boutique hotel seems most promising," he said when she finished. "However, I'm concerned about the capacity. Morgan's guest list has a way of expanding unexpectedly." Rachel nodded. "I noticed that the guest list Kim sent has already grown from 30 to 42. That's why I've included the contingency options." Sebastian leaned back in his chair, a look of appreciation crossing his face. "You're thorough." "I have to be. In event planning, something always goes sideways. Better to anticipate than scramble." A genuine smile spread across his face, transforming his serious demeanor. "A philosophy I share in business." The door opened, and his assistant brought in a tray with coffee and what appeared to be freshly baked pastries. "Thank you, Caroline." Rachel accepted the coffee gratefully, the rich aroma telling her this wasn't standard office fare. "This is excellent," she said after taking a sip. "A small roastery in Colombia. I discovered it during a business trip last year." Sebastian selected a pastry from the tray. "Please help yourself." "These are from Marguerite's downtown, apparently the best in Portland, though I rarely have time to indulge." Rachel chose a chocolate croissant, suddenly aware that what she'd expected to be a quick business meeting was stretching into something more comfortable. "So about the budget Kim mentioned." Sebastian waved his hand dismissively. "The budget is flexible. Morgan is my only sister and she's been through a lot these past few years. I want this to be special for her." Rachel tilted her head. "Through a lot." A shadow passed over Sebastian's features. "Our father passed away 18 months ago. It was unexpected. Morgan postponed the wedding, which was originally planned for last summer. This is the first time I've seen her truly happy again." "I'm sorry," Rachel said softly. "I didn't know about your father." Sebastian nodded, his expression guarded. "Thank you." He seemed to refocus, straightening slightly. Let's say this: secure the venue you think best suits the occasion and don't worry about the cost. Just keep me updated. That's very generous, but I should warn you that unlimited budgets sometimes lead to unnecessary extravagance, Rachel said carefully. Sebastian's eyebrows shot up, and then he laughed, a rich, genuine sound that seemed to fill the office. Most people would just take the blank check and run with it. Rachel shrugged, smiling. I'm not most people, and honestly, the most memorable events aren't always the most expensive. It's about the details that matter to the guest of honor. And what details would those be for Morgan? He asked, leaning forward slightly, his coffee forgotten. Well, from what I remember, Morgan loves vintage anything, particularly from the 1950s. She collects old records and had this obsession with Audrey Hepburn. She always said her dream vacation was Paris in springtime. Rachel paused, surprised by how easily these details came back to her. Has any of that changed? Sebastian was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. No, he said quietly. No, it hasn't changed at all. In fact, that's why her fiancé proposed in Paris last year. Rachel smiled. Perfect. Then I think we can create something really special that combines the Parisian theme with touches that are uniquely Morgan. Sebastian nodded, seemingly lost in thought for a moment before checking his watch. I've kept you longer than intended. Let me walk you out. As they stepped into the elevator together, Rachel noticed how Sebastian's presence seemed to fill the small space. There was something compelling about him, a quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. Will you be attending the shower? She asked as they descended. I hadn't planned to, he admitted. Aren't bridal showers typically women-only affairs? Rachel smiled. Traditionally, yes, but co-ed showers are becoming more common, and since you're funding this extravaganza, you should at least make an appearance. I'll consider it. The elevator doors opened to the lobby, and Sebastian walked her to the entrance. It's been a pleasure, Rachel. I look forward to seeing what you create for Morgan. Thank you for your trust, she replied, extending her hand again. When he took it, she felt a brief squeeze that seemed more personal than professional. I have a feeling you're exactly what this event needed, he said, his blue eyes holding hers for a moment too long to be merely polite. As Rachel drove away, she couldn't help replaying their meeting in her mind. Sebastian Stevens wasn't at all what she'd expected. Where she'd anticipated a detached executive writing checks from afar, she'd found a deeply involved brother who clearly cared about his sister's happiness. And despite his obvious wealth and position, there had been no condescension or arrogance in his manner, just genuine interest and unexpected warmth. Her phone buzzed with a text from Kim. How did it go with Sebastian? Intimidating, right? Did he approve everything? Rachel smiled to herself as she typed her reply. Meeting went well. Budget approved. Working on venue contracts now. And intimidating. Not exactly the word I'd use. Over the next week, Rachel threw herself into planning Morgan's shower. She secured the boutique hotel's garden, terrace, and elegant space that could be transformed into a Parisian sidewalk cafe with the right touches. She sourced vintage-inspired invitations, arranged for a French pastry chef to create a specialized dessert table, and even found a jazz quartet that specialized in classic French music. Each decision was documented and emailed to Sebastian for approval, though she noticed his responses were always prompt and affirmative, often with thoughtful questions or suggestions that showed he was paying close attention to the details. Unlike most clients who simply deferred to her expertise, Sebastian seemed genuinely invested in the process. 10 days after their initial meeting, Rachel was at the hotel, measuring the terrace for decorations when her phone rang. Sebastian's name flashed on the screen. "Hello." She answered, surprised by the flutter in her stomach. "Rachel, I hope I'm not interrupting." His voice sounded different, less formal, more relaxed. "Not at all. I'm just at the hotel taking some final measurements. Actually, that's why I'm calling. I'm nearby and thought I might stop by to see the venue in person. Would that be convenient?" Rachel glanced down at her casual attire, jeans and a simple green blouse, her hair pulled into a messy ponytail. Not exactly how she'd prefer to meet a client, but it couldn't be helped. "Of course. I'll be here for another hour at least." "Perfect. I'll be there in about 15 minutes. True to his word, Sebastian arrived shortly after, looking somehow both polished and relaxed in dark jeans and a light blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. Without the formality of his office, he appeared younger, more approachable. "This is it," Rachel said, gesturing to the terrace. "We'll have cafe tables set up here, string lights overhead and flowers everywhere. The caterers will serve from that section, and we'll have the gift table by the fountain." Sebastian nodded, walking the perimeter of the space. "It's smaller than I imagined from the photos." "But more intimate," Rachel countered. "And the adjacency to the garden gives it a sense of expansion. Plus, the view of the city is spectacular, especially in late afternoon when the shower will be held." Sebastian paused, looking out at the skyline before turning back to her with a smile. "You're right. It's perfect." He approached where she stood with her notebook. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her sketches. "Of course." She handed him the book, suddenly conscious of her scribbled notes and rough drawings. "It's just a working draft." Sebastian studied the pages with interest. "You're an artist." "Hardly," Rachel laughed. "Just rough concept sketches." "No, these are good." His finger traced a drawing of the proposed table settings. "You have a real eye for design." Rachel felt unreasonably pleased by his compliment. "Thank you. I used to draw more before life got busy. Isn't that always the way?" Sebastian handed back the notebook, his fingers brushing hers. "Have you eaten lunch? I know a great bistro just down the street." The invitation caught Rachel off guard. To discuss the menu options," Sebastian added quickly. "Kim mentioned you were considering French cuisine, and this place is quite authentic." "Oh, yes, of course." Rachel tried to ignore her disappointment at the clarification. "This was a business lunch, nothing more. Let me just pack up here." The bistro was indeed authentic, tucked away on a side street with a red awning and small tables crowded together in true Parisian fashion. Sebastian greeted the owner by name and requested a table in the corner, away from the main lunch rush. "You come here often?" Rachel asked as they settled at a small table beside a window. "When I can." The owner, Morris, was a chef on one of our shipping lines years ago before he decided to open his own place. My father helped him secure the location. Sebastian smiled at the memory. "The bouillabaisse is extraordinary." They ordered bouillabaisse for Sebastian and coq au vin for Rachel, and fell into surprisingly easy conversation. Sebastian asked about how she'd started in event planning, and Rachel found herself sharing more than she'd intended about her career shift. "So the corporate layoff was actually a blessing in disguise," she concluded. "I'd been planning friends' events for years as a hobby, but never considered it could be a career until necessity forced my hand." "The best businesses often start that way," Sebastian nodded. "Finding the intersection of passion and practicality." "What about you?" Rachel asked, sipping her sparkling water. "Did you always know you'd take over your father's company?" A shadow passed over Sebastian's face. "It was expected, but not necessarily what I wanted initially. I studied architectural engineering in college. I wanted to build things, not just ship them." "What changed your mind?" "Reality," he said with a wry smile. "My father needed me. The company was struggling after the recession, and he wasn't well, though none of us knew how unwell at the time. He paused, his expression distant. I told myself it would be temporary, just until things stabilized. Then 1 year became 5, became 10. Do you regret it? Rachel asked softly. Sebastian considered the question seriously. No, I found unexpected satisfaction in the work. And I still design mostly renovations to our family home and vacation properties, but it keeps that part of me alive. I'd love to see your designs sometime, Rachel said, then immediately felt foolish. I mean, professionally speaking, for venue inspiration. Sebastian's eyes crinkled at the corners. Of course. Perhaps after the shower when things are less hectic. The meal arrived, saving Rachel from responding. As they ate, the conversation shifted back to the bridal shower plans, but something had changed in the dynamic between them. There was a new ease, a sense of connection that went beyond client and planner. So, Sebastian said as they finished their coffee, when will Morgan be involved in all this? I assume at some point you two will reconnect, Rachel shook her head. Actually, it's meant to be a surprise. Kim has convinced Morgan that they're just having a small gathering at her apartment. The hotel terrace reveal will be part of the experience. Ah, so my sister has no idea her college roommate is behind it all. Sebastian studied her face. May I ask why you didn't reach out to her directly when you got involved? You said you were good friends once. The question caught Rachel off guard. I'm not sure. Maybe I was afraid it had been too long, that too much had changed. People change, certainly, Sebastian acknowledged. But real connections don't just disappear. They go dormant, waiting for the right moment to reawaken. Something in his tone made Rachel wonder if he was still talking about her friendship with Morgan. You sound like you're speaking from experience. A slight smile played at his lips. Perhaps. He glanced at his watch and signaled for the check. Unfortunately, I have a conference call in 30 minutes. Of course, Rachel said, reaching for her purse. Thank you for lunch, it was delicious and definitely gave me ideas for the menu. Sebastian waved away her attempt to contribute. Please, this was my invitation. After settling the bill, he walked her outside. Where are you parked? Actually, I walked from the hotel. It's only a few blocks. Then allow me to drive you back. He gestured to a sleek black Audi parked nearby. That's really not necessary, I insist. It's starting to look like rain. As if on cue, a few drops began to fall from the suddenly darkening sky. Rachel laughed. Your weather prediction skills are impressive. One of my many talents, he replied with a grin that transformed his usually serious face. The drive back to the hotel was brief, but as Sebastian pulled up to the entrance, he hesitated before unlocking the doors. Rachel, I was wondering if you might be interested in seeing one of my renovation projects. The house we're using for Morgan's rehearsal dinner next month, I recently redesigned the entire ground floor. Rachel blinked in surprise. Are you asking me professionally or? Both, perhaps, Sebastian admitted, meeting her eyes directly. The renovations might give you ideas for future events, but I'd also simply enjoy your company outside of bridal shower planning. Rachel felt a warm flush spread across her cheeks. I'd like that. Tomorrow evening, around 7, I could pick you up. Tomorrow works. She reached for her business card and wrote her home address on the back. Here you go. Sebastian took the card, his fingers brushing against hers. Until tomorrow, then. As Rachel gathered her belongings and stepped out of the car, she felt a sense of anticipation that had nothing to do with event planning and everything to do with the man watching her walk away. The next evening, Rachel found herself changing outfits for the third time. This is ridiculous, she muttered to herself, discarding yet another dress onto her bed. It's just a professional consultation with a client's brother. who happens to be incredibly attractive and successful and asked me out in a way that might or might not be a date. She finally settled on a knee-length burgundy dress with three-quarter sleeves, elegant enough if this was a date, professional enough if it wasn't. She just finished applying a touch of lipstick when her doorbell rang precisely at 7. Sebastian stood on her porch holding a small bouquet of wildflowers, looking devastatingly handsome in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater over a white button-down. "These reminded me of the sketches in your notebook," he said, offering her the flowers. "They're beautiful, thank you." Rachel accepted them with a smile, definitely leaning toward the "this is a date" interpretation now. "Would you like to come in while I put these in water?" Sebastian followed her into the small but charming craftsman bungalow she'd purchased the year before. "You have a lovely home," he observed, taking in the cozy living room with its built-in bookshelves and large windows. "Thanks. It's a work in progress, but I fell in love with the character." Rachel arranged the flowers in a vase. "The previous owners preserved all the original woodwork." "The craftsmanship is exceptional," Sebastian agreed, running his hand along the detailed crown molding. "You don't see this level of attention to detail in modern construction." Rachel watched him examine her home with genuine appreciation and felt a surge of warmth. Here was a man who, despite his wealth, valued the same things she did: quality, history, authenticity. "Ready?" Sebastian asked, turning to find her observing him. "Absolutely," she smiled, grabbing her coat and purse. The drive took them to the West Hills, winding up through increasingly exclusive neighborhoods until they reached a private drive lined with mature oak trees. At the end stood a stunning modern interpretation of a Mediterranean villa, its warm stone exterior glowing in the evening light. "This is your family home?" Rachel asked, unable to hide her amazement as they pulled into the circular drive. Sebastian chuckled. "No, though I did grow up nearby. This belongs to family friends who are living in Europe for the year. They asked me to oversee the renovations in their absence, and in exchange, we're using it for Morgan's rehearsal dinner and a few other wedding events." Inside, the villa opened into a breathtaking foyer with a sweeping staircase and views straight through to a terrace overlooking the city. Sebastian led her through the main level, describing the structural changes and design choices he'd made. The owners wanted to preserve the Mediterranean feel but modernize the flow and functionality, he explained as they entered a vast kitchen that seamlessly connected to an outdoor living space. The original kitchen was walled off, typical of homes built in this era. "We removed 3 load-bearing walls and installed steel supports to create this open concept." Rachel listened, genuinely fascinated by his knowledge and the passion that animated his features as he described the project. "You missed your calling," she said as they stepped onto the terrace. "You're an architect at heart." Sebastian's expression softened. "Perhaps, but life rarely follows a straight line, does it?" "No," Rachel agreed, thinking of her own unexpected career change. "But sometimes the detours lead us exactly where we need to be." They stood side by side at the terrace railing, looking out at the twinkling lights of Portland below. The spring evening was cool but not cold, the air fragrant with blooming jasmine from the garden below. "I brought wine," Sebastian said after a comfortable silence. "Would you like a glass?" "That sounds perfect." He disappeared into the kitchen and returned with 2 glasses of red wine and a small plate of appetizers. "I took the liberty of arranging a light dinner. Nothing elaborate, just some things I picked up from a deli downtown." "You think of everything," Rachel smiled, accepting a glass. "Professional hazard," he admitted with a grin. "In shipping, overlooking details can cost millions." They settled onto a comfortable outdoor sofa. the low table before them arrayed with an assortment of cheeses, olives, crusty bread, and charcuterie. The conversation flowed easily from work to travel to books, each discovery of shared interests or complementary differences adding layers to their connection. "So how did you and Morgan meet?" Sebastian asked as he refilled their glasses. "She's 4 years younger than you, right?" Rachel nodded. "We were paired as roommates my junior year, her freshman year. The housing department had this mentorship program for first-year students. I think they expected us to clash. She was this bubbly fashion major, and I was a serious marketing student always buried in case studies. But you didn't clash." "Not at all. Morgan has this way of bringing people out of themselves. She made me take breaks, dragged me to parties I would have skipped, convinced me that my education wouldn't suffer if I occasionally had fun." Rachel smiled at the memories. "She probably saved me from becoming a complete workaholic." "That sounds like my sister," Sebastian laughed. "She's always been the heart of our family, the one who insists on celebrations and traditions, even when the rest of us are too busy or distracted." "What about you?" Rachel asked. "Were you the serious older brother, guilty as charged?" Sebastian admitted. "Though in my defense, our mother died when Morgan was only 12, so someone had to be the responsible one." "I'm sorry," Rachel said softly. "That must have been incredibly difficult." Sebastian nodded, his expression reflective rather than sad. "It shaped us both, but in different ways. Morgan embraced life with both arms, determined to find joy everywhere. I became the protector, the planner, always thinking 10 steps ahead to prevent any more pain or loss. And your father?" "He retreated into work," Sebastian said simply. "He loved us, but grief changed him. The business became his refuge." Rachel felt a deepening understanding of the man beside her, his sense of responsibility, his attention to detail, his devotion to his sister. "Is that why you're so involved in her wedding planning? Making sure everything is perfect for her?" Sebastian looked surprised by her insight. "Yes, I suppose it is. Morgan deserves a perfect day, after losing Dad, postponing once already. She needs this to be everything she's dreamed of." "That's very sweet," Rachel said, touched by his dedication. "But perfection is overrated, you know. Sometimes the most memorable moments come from the unexpected." Sebastian turned to face her fully, their knees almost touching on the sofa. "Like finding yourself having dinner with your sister's bridal shower planner instead of reviewing quarterly shipping reports." Rachel felt her cheeks warm, and not from the wine. "Exactly like that." Their eyes held for a long moment, the air between them charged with possibility. Sebastian leaned forward slightly, then seemed to catch himself. "I should probably show you the ballroom where the rehearsal dinner will be held," he said, standing up abruptly. Rachel followed him inside, aware that something had shifted between them, a line nearly crossed, then carefully re-established. As Sebastian led her through the rest of the house, his descriptions became more technical, his manner more professional. By the time he drove her home, the easy intimacy of earlier had been replaced by a polite distance that left Rachel wondering if she'd imagined the connection between them. At her door, Sebastian thanked her formally for her time and insights. "I'll email you the final guest count tomorrow," he said, hands in his pockets. "Kim confirmed the last few RSVPs today." "Great," Rachel nodded, feeling strangely disappointed. "And the special order pastries are confirmed. Everything's on track." Sebastian hesitated, then stepped back. "Good night, Rachel." "Good night, Sebastian." As she watched him drive away, Rachel sighed. Whatever had sparked between them earlier seemed to have been deliberately extinguished. Perhaps he'd thought better of getting involved with someone working on his sister's event. Or perhaps she'd misread the situation entirely. Either way, she had a bridal shower to plan. Personal feelings would have to wait. The next week passed in a flurry of activity as the shower date approached. Rachel coordinated with vendors, finalized decorations, and managed last-minute changes to the guest list. Her communication with Sebastian remained strictly professional, brief emails confirming details, a couple of short phone calls to discuss logistical questions. 2 days before the shower, Rachel was at the hotel supervising the delivery of specialty rentals when her phone rang. Morgan's name flashed on the screen, sending a jolt of panic through her. Had she somehow discovered the surprise? "Hello," Rachel answered cautiously. "Rachel Collier, you sneaky thing," Morgan's familiar voice bubbled through the phone. "Why didn't you tell me you were planning my shower?" Rachel winced. "Kim was supposed to keep it a surprise. How did you find out?" "Not from Kim," Morgan laughed. "Sebastian let it slip last night at dinner. He was asking me if I still collected vintage records, and when I asked why, he mentioned something about you remembering that detail. The rest I pieced together." "I'm sorry the surprise is ruined," Rachel said, genuinely disappointed. "Are you kidding? I'm thrilled." When Kim said she was handling my shower, I was honestly a bit worried. That girl can't organize her own closet, let alone an event. Morgan paused. "But knowing you're behind it makes me so excited. And it gives me the perfect excuse to insist we have lunch today to catch up properly before the shower." Rachel glanced at her to-do list for the day. It was packed, but, "You know what? That sounds perfect. When and where?" They agreed to meet at a cafe near the hotel at 1 o'clock. Rachel spent the morning overseeing the French bistro chairs being delivered and arranging with the florist for last-minute additions to the centerpieces. By the time she walked into the cafe, she was running 10 minutes late, but had crossed off most of her urgent tasks. Morgan spotted her immediately, jumping up from her table with a squeal that turned heads throughout the restaurant. "Rachel! Oh my God, look at you!" Rachel found herself engulfed in an enthusiastic hug, Morgan's familiar perfume bringing back a flood of college memories. When they separated, Rachel took in her old friend, still gorgeous, with her trademark blonde waves now cut into a sophisticated bob, her blue eyes, so similar to her brother's, sparkling with excitement. "You look amazing," Rachel said honestly as they sat down. "Being engaged clearly agrees with you. Being in love agrees with me," Morgan corrected with a happy sigh. "Wait till you meet David, he's absolutely perfect. Not perfect, you know, but perfect for me." "I can't wait to meet him." "Enough about me," Morgan said, leaning forward. "Tell me everything I've missed. The last I heard, you were climbing the corporate ladder at that marketing firm." Rachel recounted her career change, her house purchase, and some of her more interesting event planning adventures. Morgan listened with genuine interest, asking thoughtful questions and laughing in all the right places. "I always knew you'd end up doing something creative," Morgan said as their salads arrived. "You were too artistic to be trapped in corporate boardrooms forever." "Says the fashion major who's now running a successful clothing boutique," Rachel countered, having learned from their catch-up that Morgan owned a thriving store specializing in vintage-inspired modern clothing. "True," Morgan grinned. "We both found our paths, just not the ones we expected." She took a bite of her salad, then fixed Rachel with a mischievous look. "So, tell me about working with my brother." Rachel nearly choked on her water. "What do you mean? Come on, Ratch. Sebastian's been acting weird ever since your name came up. He gets this intense look whenever the shower is mentioned, and he's suddenly dropping by vendor meetings, which is completely out of character." Morgan's eyes narrowed playfully. "Something's up. We've been working closely on your shower, that's all," Rachel said, trying to sound casual. "He's been very involved in the planning process. Sebastian. Involved in party planning. Morgan's eyebrows shot up. The man who sends his assistant to buy birthday gifts, who had to be physically dragged to his own 30th birthday party. That's Sebastian. Rachel couldn't help laughing. He's been surprisingly attentive to the details. He really wants everything to be perfect for you. Morgan's expression softened. He's always looked out for me, especially since Dad died. She studied Rachel's face. But I think there's more to it. He asked me about you, you know. About what happened to our friendship, why we lost touch. Rachel felt her cheeks warm. What did you tell him? The truth that life got busy, we moved to different cities, and neither of us was very good at long-distance friendship maintenance. Morgan reached across the table to touch Rachel's hand. I've missed you, though. Seeing your name come up in all this wedding planning made me realize how much. I've missed you too, Rachel admitted, feeling a weight lift that she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying. The distance between them hadn't been intentional, just the slow drift of lives moving in different directions. Yet here they were, reconnecting as easily as if no time had passed at all. So about Sebastian. Morgan began again, her eyes twinkling. Morgan, seriously, there's nothing. He's single, you know, Morgan continued as if Rachel hadn't spoken. Has been for almost 2 years now. Broke up with Victoria right before Dad got sick. Rachel felt a surge of curiosity she tried to suppress. I'm sorry to hear that. Don't be. She was all wrong for him, cared more about his position than the person. Morgan leaned closer. But you've always seen people for who they really are. It's one of the things I loved most about you in college. Are you trying to set me up with your brother? Rachel asked incredulously. Maybe, Morgan grinned. Or maybe I'm just pointing out an interesting possibility. Sebastian needs someone who challenges him, who sees past the CEO facade to the architect at heart underneath. Rachel felt a flutter of awareness at Morgan's eerily accurate assessment. Had Sebastian discussed their conversation at the villa with his sister? Morgan, I'm focused on making your shower perfect, not on my love life, Rachel said firmly, though not unkindly. Morgan held up her hands in surrender. Fine, fine. Just planting seeds. She glanced at her watch and gasped. I've got to run meeting with the wedding photographer in 20 minutes. They hugged goodbye, promising not to let years pass before their next conversation, and Morgan left Rachel sitting at the table, her mind swirling with confusing thoughts about both the Stevens siblings. The day of the bridal shower dawned clear and warm, perfect weather for the outdoor terrace Rachel had transformed into a Parisian dream. String lights zigzagged overhead, vintage-inspired café tables dotted the space, and flower arrangements in mercury glass vases added romantic touches throughout. A string quartet was setting up in the corner, and waitstaff in French bistro attire prepared to circulate with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Rachel had arrived 3 hours early to oversee the final setup, dressed in a pale blue sundress that complemented the color scheme without matching it exactly. As the designated coordinator, she wanted to blend in with the guests while remaining identifiable to the staff. At 30 minutes before the shower's start time, Rachel did a final walkthrough, checking every detail. The dessert table was a work of art, French macarons in pastel colors, delicate pastries, and a centerpiece cake designed to look like a stack of vintage hat boxes. The gift table was elegantly arranged beside the terrace fountain, with Morgan's initials soon to change from MS to MH suspended overhead in floral letters. Rachel was adjusting one final flower arrangement when she heard a familiar deep voice behind her. You've outdone yourself. She turned to find Sebastian standing at the terrace entrance, impeccably dressed in light gray slacks and a white button-down, looking more relaxed than she'd seen him since their evening at the villa. Thank you, she said, smoothing her dress self-consciously. Everything came together beautifully. Because of you, he approached, hands in his pockets. Morgan is going to be overwhelmed. In a good way, I hope, Rachel smiled. Though the surprise element is gone. Sorry about that, Sebastian grimaced. Not my finest moment, it's fine. Actually, it gave us a chance to reconnect before today, which was nice. Yes, she mentioned you at lunch. Sebastian's expression was carefully neutral. Did she happen to say anything about me? Rachel felt her cheeks warm. She might have mentioned you were single. Sebastian closed his eyes briefly. Of course she did. He sighed, then met Rachel's gaze directly. My sister has many wonderful qualities, but subtlety isn't one of them. Apparently not, Rachel agreed, a smile tugging at her lips. Sebastian took a step closer. Rachel, there you are. Kim's voice rang out from the terrace entrance. Rachel, the photographer, is here and Morgan just texted that they're 5 minutes away. The moment broken, Sebastian stepped back. I should find my place. We'll talk later, Rachel nodded, already shifting into event coordinator mode. Definitely. The shower was a spectacular success. Morgan's genuine shock at the elaborate setting, even knowing Rachel was involved. She hadn't expected this level of detail, set the tone for an afternoon of laughter, tears, and celebration. The guests, a mix of family, childhood friends, and college companions, mingled easily in the enchanting setting. Rachel stayed mostly in the background, ensuring everything ran smoothly while allowing Kim to play her role as maid of honor. She caught glimpses of Sebastian throughout the event, chatting with Morgan's future in-laws, helping an elderly aunt to her seat, unobtrusively directing waitstaff to guests who needed attention. During the gift opening portion, Rachel positioned herself near the back, clipboard in hand to record gifts for thank-you notes. As Morgan exclaimed over a vintage record player, just like the one we had in our dorm room, Ratch, Sebastian appeared beside Rachel. You're not enjoying the party, he observed quietly. I am, she countered. Just differently. There's satisfaction in watching something you've created come to life exactly as planned. I understand that feeling, he nodded. But sometimes the creator deserves to join the celebration too. Before Rachel could respond, Morgan called her name. Rachel, come here, this gift is for you. Surprised, Rachel made her way to the front where Morgan sat surrounded by discarded wrapping paper and ribbons. For me? Well, technically it's for me, Morgan grinned, but it's because of you. She handed Rachel a small box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a miniature Eiffel Tower. It's beautiful, Rachel said, confused. Read the card, Morgan prompted. Rachel opened the small envelope and read aloud. For the friend who brings Paris to Portland when I need it most. Love, Morgan, but I don't understand. This is my gift to you, Morgan explained. A thank you for creating this magical day, and for finding your way back into my life just when I needed my college bestie most. She stood and embraced Rachel tightly, whispering, and maybe for making my brother smile again too. Rachel felt tears threatening as she returned the hug. This was why she loved event planning, not just the details and the beauty, but the human connections, the moments that mattered. As the afternoon progressed, Rachel found herself gradually relaxing into the role of guest rather than coordinator. The staff knew their responsibilities. Everything was running smoothly, and Morgan's joyful presence at the center of it all was its own reward. Near the end of the shower, as guests began to depart with their French-themed favors, tiny jars of lavender honey with custom labels, Rachel slipped away to the hotel kitchen to check on the final dessert service. She was conferring with the pastry chef when she felt a presence behind her. Escaping your own triumph? Sebastian asked, leaning against the doorframe. Rachel smiled. Just making sure the chocolate soufflés aren't overcooked. They're Morgan's favorite. Always thinking of the details, he straightened and approached her. "Walk with me. There's something I'd like to discuss before everyone leaves." Curious, Rachel followed him through a side door that led to a small garden adjacent to the terrace where the party continued. The late afternoon sun bathed everything in golden light, and the sounds of laughter and conversation from the shower created a pleasant backdrop. "I wanted to thank you properly," Sebastian began, stopping beside a rose arbor. "What you created today went beyond a professional obligation. You gave my sister exactly what she needed, not just a party, but a reconnection with an important part of her life." "That's very kind of you to say," Rachel replied, touched by his perception. "But Morgan makes it easy to want to do something special for her." "She does have that effect on people," Sebastian agreed with a fond smile. "But I think you have a similar quality, seeing what matters to people, what will truly resonate." Rachel felt herself blushing under his intent gaze. "It's part of my job." "I don't think so," Sebastian shook his head. "I think it's just who you are. It's what made you remember Morgan's love of vintage records and Audrey Hepburn years after you'd last spoken. It's what made you see the architect in me when most people only see the CEO." The intensity in his blue eyes made Rachel's heart beat faster. "Sebastian, I've been trying to maintain a professional distance," he continued, "because you're working on my sister's event and because I didn't want to complicate things. But the truth is, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that first meeting in my office." Rachel drew in a sharp breath. "I thought maybe I'd imagined the connection between us." "You didn't imagine anything," Sebastian said softly, taking a step closer. "And after watching you today, seeing your creativity, your attention to detail, the way you care about making this day special for Morgan, I'm even more certain that I want to know you better, beyond bridal showers and wedding planning." "I'd like that too," Rachel admitted, feeling suddenly shy despite the certainty in her heart. Sebastian reached for her hand, his fingers warm and sure as they enclosed hers. "Would tomorrow night be too soon for dinner? A proper date this time, no pretense of professional consultations." Rachel smiled up at him. "Tomorrow sounds perfect." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, Rachel rose slightly on her toes to meet him halfway. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like both a beginning and a recognition, gentle at first, then deepening as Sebastian's free hand moved to the small of her back, drawing her closer. When they finally parted, Sebastian's eyes were darker, his smile both satisfied and promising. "I've been wanting to do that since you walked into my office and challenged my blank check approach to party planning." Rachel laughed softly. "And I've been wanting you to since you showed me your architectural renovations and talked about missed callings and life's detours." A voice called from the direction of the terrace, Morgan, looking for her brother to help with the final toast. Sebastian sighed, his forehead resting briefly against Rachel's. "Duty calls," he murmured. "Go," Rachel smiled. "I need to check on those soufflés anyway." Sebastian squeezed her hand once more before releasing it. "Tomorrow, then, 7 o'clock, I'll be ready." As Sebastian walked away, Rachel touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the warmth of his kiss. What had begun as a simple favor for an old friend had somehow led her to an unexpected connection with a man who really saw her in a way few ever had. Tomorrow would bring a proper first date, but today had already delivered the promise of something rare and real. And for a woman who specialized in creating perfect moments for others, it felt like the universe had finally orchestrated one just for her. 6 months later, Rachel stood in the bridal suite of a historic Portland hotel, helping Morgan with the final touches on her wedding day look. The October wedding had arrived with picture-perfect weather, crisp, clear, and bathed in golden autumn light. Stop fidgeting, Rachel laughed, adjusting the vintage lace veil in Morgan's hair. You're going to dislodge all my hard work. I can't help it, Morgan replied, her eyes bright with excitement. I've been waiting for this day for so long. First the postponement after Dad died, then waiting for David's medical fellowship to end. It feels like we've been engaged forever. The best things are worth waiting for, Rachel said softly, stepping back to admire her handiwork. There. Absolute perfection. Morgan turned to the mirror and gasped. The elegant updo showcased her delicate features and the cathedral veil that had belonged to her mother. Rachel, it's exactly how I imagined. Thank you. A knock at the door announced the arrival of Kim and the other bridesmaids, all dressed in flowing gowns the color of champagne. Rachel, as a last-minute addition to the bridal party, Morgan had insisted once they reconnected. Wore the same dress but with subtle gold accents that designated her special status as the bride's oldest friend. The photographer wants pre-ceremony pictures in 15 minutes, Kim announced, then gasped when she saw Morgan. Oh my God, you're breathtaking. As the bridesmaids swarmed around Morgan with compliments and last-minute adjustments, Rachel slipped out to check on the ceremony setup. The hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed into a romantic autumn wonderland with cascading florals, twinkling lights, and touches of vintage glamour that perfectly captured Morgan's aesthetic. Rachel was inspecting the aisle runner when she felt familiar arms slip around her waist from behind. Sneaking away from bridesmaid duties, Sebastian's voice was warm in her ear. She turned in his embrace, taking in the sight of him in his best man's tuxedo. Just making sure everything's perfect. It is, he assured her, dropping a quick kiss on her lips. The wedding planner has everything under control. You're allowed to be just a bridesmaid today, remember? Rachel sighed. Old habits. I can't help checking the details. One of the many things I love about you, Sebastian smiled, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. But today, I need you to focus on walking down that aisle exactly 17 minutes from now, looking breathtakingly beautiful and not stealing focus from my sister. As if anyone could, Rachel laughed. Morgan is radiant. Must be something about women in love, Sebastian murmured, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that still made her heart race. You have the same glow. In the 6 months since Morgan's bridal shower, Rachel and Sebastian's relationship had blossomed with surprising ease. Their first official date had led to a second, then a third, until they were spending nearly every free evening together. Rachel had discovered that beneath Sebastian's composed executive exterior was a man of deep passions for architecture, for sailing, for obscure historical documentaries that he watched with endearing enthusiasm. And Sebastian had delighted in Rachel's creative spirit, her ability to find beauty in overlooked details, her talent for transforming ordinary moments into extraordinary memories. 3 months in, Sebastian had given her a key to his waterfront condo. A month after that, Rachel had cleared a drawer and closet space for him at her bungalow. They'd fallen into a comfortable rhythm of alternating between his place and hers, their lives intertwining with a naturalness that sometimes took Rachel's breath away. I should get back to the bridal suite, Rachel said reluctantly, glancing at her watch. Morgan will be wondering where I disappeared to. Sebastian caught her hand as she turned to leave. Have dinner with me tonight. After all, the wedding festivities are over. Rachel raised an eyebrow. You'll be exhausted. We both will. Nevertheless, he insisted, his expression suddenly serious. There's something important I want to discuss. A flutter of anticipation stirred in Rachel's chest. All right, dinner it is. The ceremony was everything Morgan had dreamed of: romantic, personal, and deeply moving. Rachel felt tears welling as she watched her friend exchange vows with David, a kind-eyed pediatric surgeon who clearly adored her. Throughout the service, Rachel was acutely aware of Sebastian's gaze finding hers across the altar, his smile holding secrets and promises that made her pulse quicken. The reception that followed was a joyous celebration that stretched into the evening. Morgan and David's first dance brought cheers from the guests, and the father-daughter dance performed with Morgan's uncle standing in, for her late father left not a dry eye in the house. As the best man, Sebastian delivered a toast that perfectly balanced humor and heartfelt emotion, concluding with a story about Morgan's childhood determination that moved even the stoic groom to tears. When he finished, raising his glass to the happy couple, his eyes found Rachel's in the crowd, and the intensity of his gaze made her wonder if his words about lasting love and finding one's perfect match had been meant for more than just the newlyweds. Near midnight, as the reception wound down and the happy couple prepared to depart for their honeymoon, Rachel found herself caught up in a fierce hug from Morgan. "Thank you," Morgan whispered, "not just for today but for coming back into my life. For making my shower so perfect that I knew I needed you by my side today. For making my brother happier than I've ever seen him." Rachel hugged her back tightly. "I'm the one who should be thanking you, if Kim hadn't sent that invitation." "Fate," Morgan declared, pulling back with a radiant smile. "Some connections are just meant to be." She glanced over Rachel's shoulder and winked. "Speaking of which, I think someone's waiting for you." Rachel turned to find Sebastian standing a few feet away, his bow tie undone and hanging loose around his neck, looking devastatingly handsome despite the late hour. "Ready for dinner?" he asked, extending his hand. "You still want to go out?" Rachel asked, surprised. "It's after midnight." "I made arrangements," Sebastian replied cryptically. "Trust me." Rachel placed her hand in his. "Always." Instead of leaving the hotel, Sebastian led her to an elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. "The presidential suite has a private dining room," he explained. "I thought we deserved some quiet after the chaos of the day." The suite, when they entered, took Rachel's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Portland's glittering nightscape, and a small table for two had been set on the balcony, illuminated by candlelight. "When did you arrange all this?" Rachel asked, amazed. "I have my secrets," Sebastian smiled, leading her to the table where a waiter discreetly appeared to pour champagne before disappearing again. They talked about the wedding as they enjoyed a light midnight supper, sharing observations and favorite moments from the day. Sebastian seemed both relaxed and oddly alert, his eyes never leaving Rachel's face for long. "You've been mysterious all evening," Rachel finally said, setting down her champagne glass. "What's this important thing you wanted to discuss?" Sebastian took a deep breath, reaching across the table to take her hand. "When I met you 6 months ago, I thought I was simply helping with my sister's bridal shower. I had no idea I was meeting the woman who would change everything." Rachel felt her heart begin to race as Sebastian continued. "I've always been the planner, the one thinking 10 steps ahead, building contingencies into every scenario. But with you, Rachel, I've learned to appreciate the present moment, the beauty in unexpected connections, the joy of discovering someone who sees the world in ways that complement and expand your own vision." He stood and moved to kneel beside her chair, never releasing her hand. "I had a whole speech prepared, but looking at you now, all I really want to say is this. I love you, Rachel. I love your creativity, your kindness, your attention to details that others miss. I love how you've brought color and spontaneity back into my life." From his pocket, Sebastian withdrew a small velvet box. "I know it's fast, some might say too fast, but when you know, you know," and I have never been more certain of anything in my life." He opened the box to reveal a vintage-inspired ring with a round diamond surrounded by a halo of smaller stones. "Rachel Collier, will you marry me?" Tears filled Rachel's eyes as joy expanded in her chest. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Sebastian, I will absolutely marry you." His face broke into a smile of pure happiness as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, of course it did. Sebastian had probably had it sized from a ring he'd noticed her wearing. As he rose to pull her into his arms, Rachel marveled at how a simple invitation to plan a bridal shower had led her here to this perfect moment, to this extraordinary man, to a future brighter than she could have imagined. "You know what today is?" Sebastian murmured against her hair as they held each other close. Rachel pulled back slightly, puzzled. "Saturday. 6 months exactly since we met in my office," he said softly. "The day my assistant showed in a beautiful event planner who proceeded to tell me that unlimited budgets weren't always the best approach." Rachel laughed, remembering. "You must have thought I was crazy, turning down a blank check." "I thought you were fascinating," Sebastian corrected, brushing his thumb across her cheek. "And every day since then has only confirmed that first impression." As they sealed their engagement with a kiss, the lights of Portland twinkling below and the stars shining above, Rachel thought about all the events she'd planned in her career, the birthdays, anniversaries, showers, and celebrations designed to mark life's special moments. None compared to this unplanned, unexpected moment of her own. Sometimes, she realized, the most perfect events were the ones you never saw coming, the ones that began with a simple invitation and ended with a promise of forever. 1 year later, in the garden of Sebastian's newly renovated family home, Rachel stood before a mirror in what had once been his childhood bedroom. Her wedding dress, a vintage-inspired creation with delicate lace and subtle beading, caught the late afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. "Are you ready?" Morgan asked, adjusting the small floral comb securing Rachel's veil. "Everyone's in place." Rachel took a deep breath, surveying her reflection one last time. The past year had been a whirlwind merging their homes. They'd kept her charming bungalow and sold Sebastian's condo, navigating their busy careers and planning a wedding that reflected both their styles and values. "More than ready," Rachel smiled. "I've been planning other people's perfect days for years. It's about time I had one of my own." Morgan squeezed her hand. "Who would have thought my bridal shower would lead to my brother's wedding? I should have tried matchmaking years ago." "Please," Rachel laughed. "You've been taking credit for accidentally introducing us for a year now." "And I'll continue taking credit for the next 50 years, Morgan grinned, handing Rachel her bouquet of wildflowers similar to the ones Sebastian had brought her on their first quasi-date. "Now come on. Your groom is waiting, and he's been checking his watch every 30 seconds. As Rachel descended the stairs and stepped into the garden where their intimate wedding ceremony awaited, she caught sight of Sebastian standing beneath an arbor he had designed and built himself. The moment he saw her, his face transformed with a joy so pure and unguarded that tears sprang to her eyes. This, Rachel thought as she walked toward the man who had changed her life with an unexpected meeting and an invitation to plan a bridal shower, was the perfect beginning to their own love story, one that had started with planning someone else's celebration and had become the most beautiful event of all, their life together.